Hey everyone, it's Taylor here, and I'm going to share with you how I use two very different techniques to create two sympathy cards using the Botanical Beauty Background. This background stamp also has a coordinating edger die, and I'll be using the Simple Strips Sympathy stamp with the coordinating Simple Strips die. I also have a new product that I'm sharing. These are our Simple Strips stacks, perfectly sized stacks of cardstock to stamp those simple strips, and they come in sugar cube, toffee, and Oreo. I'll also be using my foam sticky strips, the brick stencil, and the rectangle designer masking stencil. I'll be doing some coloring with Gamsol, and I'll talk a little bit more about our Gamsol kit and all of the products that come in that. And then I'll be using a variety of TE inks. I have pineapple, blue corn, guava, candy corn, Oreo, and toffee. So let's start with that rectangle masking stencil. I'm lining up my sugar cube cardstock using those alignment guides, and then I'm going to blend different colors of ink onto the cardstock. I'm starting at the bottom with pineapple ink and then moving into the candy corn, slightly overlapping those two colors before I move on to the guava. Then I will overlap the guava with the candy corn, and then my last color will be the blue corn. That color I want to use very sparingly because it is quite dark, so my tip is either go up at the top of your stencil when you first put that ink down instead of going direct to the paper, or keep a little piece of cardstock or scratch paper next to you to get those first intense bits of color off of your brush before you go direct to the paper. So after I've finished that, I'm going to leave the stencil attached to the cardstock and set up the stamp, inking that with Oreo ink and stamping that down several times before I get a nice crisp image. Then I can remove that stencil and you can see the beautiful masked lines that are perfectly centered on that piece. Now I'll set aside that card panel and begin the second technique. I'll be using Oreo ink again to do the stamping, and then I'll be coloring with my Prismacolor pencils and my Gamsol kit. Our Gamsol kit includes a double-walled jar with a sponge, along with 4 paper stumps and a sanding block so you can get the extra color off of your paper stump and use it with new color. So I'm starting by dipping my paper stump into my Gamsol, and then I will rub that over the top of the colored pencil that I've laid down. I typically like to put the colored pencil towards the base of the image, whether it's a leaf or towards the center of the flower. I'll lay down a good dark amount of color towards the center, and then I will use the Gamsol to pull the color outwards towards the outside, so that I end up with that more concentrated darker color in the center or the shaded areas of my image, and then the lighter color will feather out towards the outside. And then I will go in with another color like a darker yellow or a darker orange and continue to add more of those shadows, blending them out with the Gamsol. Just continuing to dip that paper stump into the Gamsol when I feel it's getting a little dry. I can just press it into that sponge and pick up some of the Gamsol from the sponge and then use it to drag the color out on the different pieces of the image. It's a very easy technique to master. It's not something that you need a ton of practice, and I think you can get that really beautiful light to dark feathered look that people love without a lot of the practice that is required from a lot of other coloring mediums like Copics. So I do like to grab my colored pencils and my Gamsol often when I'm not feeling like digging really deep into my Copics. So here's that finished image that I've colored with my Prismacolor pencils, and now we're going to go ahead and finish these two cards. I talked a little bit before about these simple stacks. If you're familiar with our simple strips, then you know that our simple strips are a little bit larger than an A2 card size, so you're always using a little bit bigger piece of cardstock to get the entire stamp. So we've created these stacks of cardstock that make it simple for you to have exactly the size you need to stamp those sentiment strips. Then after I stamp that Sympathy set, I'm just going to line that up with the coordinating die and send that through my die cut machine, popping out all of those sentiments, and then I can lay them out on my card projects. Here I have my first sentiment that I'm popping up with my foam sticky strip towards the bottom of that blended panel, and then I'll just adhere that over the top of a blue corn card base, and that really simple technique is finished. So you can make a beautiful blended project and just stamp the image in black and white without having to color it in. Now on this colored image, I'm going to use the coordinating die and send that through my die cut machine to cut across the top of that stamp. Once I've done that, I'm going to add some interest to this card base with the brick stencil, laying that brick stencil over the top of the toffee cardstock, adhering the stencil with purple tape, and then using the toffee ink and brown blender brush to do a little bit of tone-on-tone pattern with that card base. And then it'll be really simple to just take that piece that I've colored and pop it up over the top of the card base. And all I have to do from there is choose one of those sentiment strips, and I have another beautiful sympathy card or encouragement card. I think I chose sending strength, courage, and love on this particular sentiment. So that could work for sympathy or for another encouragement type of occasion. Now you can see those two cards that I created with the same stamp and two very different techniques. I hope you learned something new today, and if you're looking for more details on any of these products, you can find it at tayloredexpressions.com.